Have you ever stopped to think about what connects a fiery debate in ancient Greece with the complex code running a modern AI? Well, the answer is logic. Today, we're going to trace its incredible evolution and see why it is, without a doubt, the single most critical tool for anyone in the legal world then and now. So what's the real link between the classic art of persuasion and the modern science of just processing information? It's all about logic. You can think of it as the fundamental operating system for how we reason. It powers everything, from how a lawyer crafts a killer argument to how an AI sifts through millions of legal documents. So here's where we're headed. We're going to trace this whole story through 4 key stages. We'll start with ancient debates, then jump to medieval wordplay, move from mathematical proofs to modern processors, and finally, we'll unpack what this all means for the essential toolkit of today's legal minds. All right, let's dive right in at the beginning, the ancient world. See, back then, logic wasn't some dusty, abstract theory. It was a practical tool, forged in the heat of public debate, where arguments were built, tested, and, completely torn apart. The Greeks were absolutely obsessed with the structure of an argument. They were always asking, is it logically sound? Then, fast forward a few centuries, and medieval scholars took it a step further. They started focusing on the words themselves, asking, are we being precise enough? Together, they literally built the foundation for all modern legal reasoning. And this was a total game changer. As the scholar George Kalinowski points out, Aristotle was really the first person to systematically analyze the form of an argument. He wasn't just interested in whether it sounded good or persuasive. He wanted to know if the underlying blueprint was actually valid. That idea changed everything. Then the medieval scholars added another crucial piece to the puzzle. They realized that using the word justice in a sentence is totally different from analyzing the meaning of the word justice itself. This distinction might seem subtle, but it's absolutely vital for avoiding the kind of linguistic traps that can completely derail a legal case. Okay, let's jump forward to the 19th and 20th centuries and see how this all builds up. This is where logic went through a massive transformation. It evolved from being a tool of rhetoric into a formal, mathematical language. The whole game just completely changed. The focus shifted dramatically. As the logician Alfred Tarski pointed out, the new goal was to achieve the absolute, undeniable certainty of a mathematical proof. Why? Because everyday language was just too slippery, too ambiguous. Logic needed a brand new language, one with the kind of rigor you'd find in algebra. And to get that kind of mathematical precision, logic adopted this new symbolic language. It just stripped away all the ambiguity. For instance, that first symbol, the universal quantifier, lets a law state with zero room for error that a rule applies to for all citizens. This was all about creating a language where misinterpretation was basically impossible. Now, here's the crucial takeaway. This formalization wasn't just some academic exercise. By creating a system of pure symbols and rules, these logicians, almost by accident, created the blueprint for computational thinking. This precise, step-by-step reasoning is the direct ancestor of the algorithms that run, everything, from your phone to the most advanced legal databases out there. Okay, so we've seen logic get incredibly precise, almost like math. But what happens when it leaves that clean, perfect world of axioms and has to deal with the messy reality of law and life? Let's take a look at how logic adapted to handle real-world uncertainty. You see, as logic started moving into fields like artificial intelligence, the very definition of rational had to change. It couldn't just be about perfect deduction from perfect facts anymore. Logic had to become useful for what they called agents of flesh and blood. And that's us, right? People making decisions with incomplete and often really messy information. This quote from Carlos Eltron just nails the modern challenge. Being rational in a courtroom isn't about having some perfect formula. It's about having the best possible process for weighing evidence, even when that evidence is flawed or incomplete. That's the daily reality of being a lawyer. This new challenge led to a whole new toolbox. Deontic logic popped up, designed specifically to handle rules and obligations. And as thinkers like Douglas Walton showed, we needed new models for what's called defeasible reasoning. These are arguments that we consider true for now, but that can be completely overturned if new evidence suddenly comes to light. Here's a perfect example of how these new logics work in the real world. Von Wright's principle ought implies can sounds simple, right? But it puts a really powerful logical check on the law itself. A law that requires someone to do the impossible isn't just unfair, it's logically invalid from the get-go. And this brings us to the central question for every modern legal professional. How do you navigate a world where the facts are messy and the rules might actually be pulling in opposite directions? This requires a toolkit that goes way beyond the clean, simple deduction of classical logic. So let's move to our final section and see how this whole journey comes together to equip the modern legal professional for exactly those challenges. What skills does this evolution of logic really demand from them today? So, the modern jurist toolkit is really built in layers. It all starts with that classical rigor to structure a solid argument. On top of that, they need a critical eye to analyze everyone else's reasoning. Then comes the linguistic precision of the medieval scholars, and it's all capped off by the modern ability to navigate the absolute chaos and uncertainty of the information age. And just look at how practical these skills are. This isn't just about building your own case. That's offense. It's also about playing defense, skillfully spotting the weak points in an opponent's argument. And maybe most critically, it's about adaptability, knowing when you have to change your entire strategy, because new evidence, like a surprise witness, has just completely rewritten the rules of the game. And this really brings us full circle. As Tarski said, the value of this entire logical tradition is profoundly practical. It's not just theory, it's mental training. It trains your mind to be clearer, more precise, and ultimately just more effective in the real world. So, as AI becomes a more and more powerful legal tool, what does this all mean for us? Well, it means the logically trained human mind is more critical than ever. Not to compete with AI, but to guide it, to challenge its conclusions, and to ensure that justice, with all its nuance, context, and empathy, always remains a fundamentally human endeavor.